Hello and welcome to The Walking Dead Season 1, Episode 1. To those who are tuning in, this is a video analysis series. I guess it's kind of a video analysis series, but it's also kind of me just like talking about the seasons, like going through the episodes in the seasons. But anyways, this is a 11 episode video series about AMC's The Walking Dead. Lord, one of my favorite shows of all time. There's no other show that I've like genuinely had a hyper fixation with for the past 3 years. Like, I've been nonstop thinking and loving this show for the past almost like 4 years. It'll be 4 years. The Walking Dead TV series premiered on October 31st, 2010. So on Halloween. The show was based off the comics, which is by Robert Kirkman. I believe he's like the main one behind like the story and everything. There were artists' names which I didn't credit for. If I can remember to put them up on the screen, I will. And if it wasn't already obvious, there are going to be spoilers in this video. Like, I don't know if I had to clear that up, but I'm gonna just clear it up. Like, there are going to be spoilers in this video because I'm literally talking about the seasons. If you haven't watched the show, please go watch the show. I can't stress enough as to why you need to watch the show. I personally just really hate spoilers and I hate being spoiled, so I would prefer, if you haven't watched the show, to go watch the show. If you don't really care, you can just stay here and watch it. I mean, it's all up to you. I mean, who am I? But no, please go watch the show if you haven't watched the show. And excuse my voice, God, Jesus Christ. But yeah, without further ado, this is The Walking Dead Season 1. Okay, so we start off in Georgia. Where in Georgia, I actually don't know. Don't ask me that. Brought to a scene of Rick, the main character of the show, the GOAT, with his friend Shane. They're in the car, and you know, Shane is throwing around his misogynistic banter, and you know, they're just having a two-guy conversation. And then they get a call from like their little radio thing, and they're like, 2 guys in a car who were chasing, and we need assistance, blah 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 blah. They get to the scene. the car with the 2 guys in it gets knocked over, and they are in shoot off. Eventually they take down the 2 guys, but somebody forgot to mention that there was a third person. That third person ends up shooting Rick. Rick gets gagged and he passes out on the floor, and then after that he goes into a coma. For how long he was in that coma, nobody knows. I don't know. But he's in a coma. And when he wakes up in the hospital, he realizes like, oh wait, like, nurse, what's going on? The flowers are dead and everything. He's like, guys, what's happening? And then he makes his way out of the hospital room. He does some walking around, some investigating. He's like, why is it so dark? Why? This is not, like, I'm not getting good vibes from this. I'm actually not really getting good vibes. And he stumbles upon a door that says, don't open, dead inside. And then he sees like these hands come out and crawl out and reach for him. And he's like, okay. So then he's like, yeah, I gotta get out of here. So once he gets out of the hospital, he goes outside. And when he steps outside, y'all, he sees a bunch of like abandoned military like trucks and whatnot. And then he sees a bunch of like dead bodies on the floor. And he's like, oh, like, why did the world kind of end while I was in my coma? Like, wait, like, what's going on? So he's like, okay, like, can you imagine going into a coma and then discovering that the world has basically ended? Like, that's kind of crazy. Anyways, he gets on a little bike, which how he rode that bike straight after coming off of a coma, I don't know. He goes back to his house. He's like, okay, well, this is crazy, but where are my wife and son? And so he goes to his house. His house is ransacked, it's empty, it's Gag City, it's like, there's nothing, it's scary boots. And then he's like, okay, where are my wife and son? He steps out of the house and he sees something in the distance. He's like, hey, help, just for it to be a walker. And then right after that, he gets hit with like a shovel, and then he wakes up, and then he's in his house that's been boarded up, and then we're introduced to Morgan and his son Dwayne. And Rick is like, what are you guys doing in my house? And he's like, whoa, calm down. We fixed your wound. It's pretty nasty, by the way. Anyways, well, Morgan is like, so while you were asleep, basically the world kind of ended. Yeah, and if you get bit, you die and then you turn. So don't get bit. That's why we had to knock you out, because we thought you was bit, but you weren't. So that's why we knocked you out. And so Rick is like, oh, that's crazy. That's actually really crazy. But I need to find my wife and son. And then Morgan's like, well, chances are your wife and son are probably dead. Like, they're probably dead boots. And he's like, no, because the pictures in this house are gone. So that means there's a chance that they're alive. And then Morgan is like, okay, well, if you think that they're alive, they're probably at the refugee center in Atlanta, downtown Atlanta. And so Rick is like, okay, well, that's where I'm going, because I need to find my wife and son. So in the morning, Rick takes Morgan and Dwayne to the police station that he worked at, which honestly, it kind of doesn't make sense to me how, like, basically the entire police station was unscathed. Like, all the supplies and everything was still there. That's what they went there for, to get supplies, ammunition and stuff, and to take showers. How they I'm not gonna get into the details, because I don't know how that stuff works. But anyways, they get their supplies, they get their ammunition, whatever. Morgan decides to stay with his son Dwayne, and then Rick goes off to downtown Atlanta to go get his wife and son, or to go find his wife and son. And in the meantime, his wife and son are actually at a campsite that's not in downtown Atlanta. It's not in downtown Atlanta. They're at a campsite, and they're with, surprise, Shane at this campsite with a bunch of other survivors. Anyways, while Rick is going down the Old Town Road, he makes it to downtown Atlanta, and he's like, it's starting to look like a ghost town. It's like, oh wait, where are all the people? Like, where's the refugee center? Like, where's the refugee center? And then he turns a corner. Mind you, he's on a horse, by the way. I didn't mention, but through the journey, the car ran out of gas and he had to get on a horse. He's on a horse. He turns the corner. Girl, why is it basically Coachella with walkers? Like, it's a bunch of walkers. And he's like, oh, that's not. And so he darts off, but the walkers catch up to him, and then they gag the horse, and then Rick narrowly escapes to like a tank that was nearby, and the walkers are tearing into that horse. Rest in peace to that horse. For real. He goes inside of a tank, and he's like, damn, like, I'm really finna get gagged. Like, I don't know how I'm getting out of this, guys. And then he hears a voice on walkie-talkie, and it says,
hey, you. Dumbass.
And then that's the end of episode 1. That's the end of episode 1, and it's so good and it's so perfect. It is, watching it for the first time, it's kind of slow, but I think it's an amazing episode to start off the series, and it does a really good job at setting up the plot for the rest of the series. And I just love it. Like, ooh, wait, like, I'm excited. Who is excited? Me. Ooh, so now we're at episode 2, which is titled Guts. It's titled Guts. Why is it titled Guts? I really don't know. Anyways, at the beginning of the episode, we're back at the campsite again. Mind you, Lori, Shane, and Carl are here. At the beginning of the episode, we see Lori and Shane kind of having an intimate relationship. And we're like, oh wait, that's not, that'll come back later, but it's a little like, oh wait, like, that's not, oh. Anyways, back to Rick Grimes, who was in that tank. He heard that voice and he was like, hey. And then the person is like, okay, so basically, like, I'm gonna help you get out of here, but you gotta listen to me, bro. And then basically Rick manages to find his way out of the tank. He's fighting off the walkers, and then he runs into that guy that was talking to him, and his name is Glenn. Glenn is like, okay, like, I'm gonna help you get out of this. Like, we're gonna get out of this. And so him and Glenn run to where the rest of Glenn's group or the rest of his like survivor clique is. And that's when we're introduced to some new characters. We're introduced to Andrea Morales, Jackie T-Dog, and Merle Dixon. And Merle Dixon is a redneck, misogynistic, racist, probably homophobic, but that's never been confirmed. He's not a good person. So basically, after he meets with the survivors, an altercation between Merle and T-Dog, who is black, happens, which leads to T-Dog getting beat up by Merle. And then Rick is like, actually, and he clocks Merle's T. I think Merle said like the N-word, and then Rick was like, there are no words anymore. He had to clock it. I'm sorry, but he had to clock it. This is the only time I'll ever give someone the N-word pass. I'm sorry. Well, yes. Well, yes. And then after that altercation, basically, he's like, okay, guys, Rick is like, we got to come up with a plan, because we can't, like, the walkers are because after their escape, the walkers kind of chase Rick and Glenn back, and so the walkers are kind of surrounding the building that the rest of the survivors are in, and they're kind of mad boots at Rick, but they're like, Rick is like, you know what, guys, I'm gonna help you because we're gonna get out of this. And so basically, or the plan is, Rick and Glenn cover themselves in walker guts. Rick and Glenn, they go through the path of walkers that is like outside of the building so that they can get to a car. Rick gets in a truck so he can pick up the survivors that are still trapped and surrounded by the walkers at the building. And then Glenn gets in a car to sound like the car's alarm so he can distract the walkers so that Rick can actually get to the survivors, or to the group. And they almost get gagged again, like it started raining, and for some reason the rain washes off the walker guts, but it's like, I understand it, but I don't. Anyways, they escape. Rick gets the rest of the group, but during that altercation, which I forgot to mention, oh my god, during that altercation between T-Dog and Rick, handcuffed Merle to the rooftop, and while the group was leaving, T-Dog had the key to unlock Merle's like handcuffs, but when he went to go unlock the handcuffs, he dropped the key, and so T-Dog had to put himself first. He had to put himself first, and he left Merle. And I would have done the same thing, because he's racist, he's misogynistic, probably homophobic. Why are we risking? I'm sorry, but I would have left him too. I'm sorry, I would have left him too. But they end up leaving him. So Rick picks up the rest of the group. Ooh, why nobody dressed like a slut? Rick picks up the rest of the group, and then they go back to the campsite. Yeah, that's basically it. They leave Atlanta. So I really like this episode. This episode is really good. Now, moving on, we're going to episode 3, Tell It to the Frogs. The episode starts off with Merle, and Merle's kind of in a situation because even though he's technically safe because he's handcuffed to the top of the roof, the walkers made it to like the door that T-Dog had locked, and so they're kind of like banging on the door, and it's kind of coming down, and Merle's like, okay, wait, like this is kind of scary because I am handcuffed to this, so they literally they're gonna get me. So he's like, what am I gonna do? The toolbox that they left, why they left the toolbox, I don't know, is still up there. So he's like, you know what? Anyways, now we're back with Rick, and the group of survivors from Atlanta make it to the campsite. And once they make it back to the campsite, the group reunites with the friends and family that is at the campsite. And Rick is kind of in his depressed era because he's like, dang, like I went to Atlanta to find my wife and son, and they're not even there. It was nothing but a bunch of zombies. Like, I'm kind of depressed right now. And so he's like, dang. And then Morales is like, hey, helicopter boy, come say hi to everybody. And then he goes to say hi, and lo and behold, who does he see? And who do I see? I see Shane Walsh. He sees his friend Shane. He's like, oh my god, Shane. Then he looks again, and then he sees his wife and son, Carl and Lori. And it's a beautiful scene, honestly, because imagine like being that hopeless, and then you find out that your wife and son were at the campsite that whole time. So thank God that he found Glenn in Atlanta, because imagine if he didn't, we wouldn't even have this series. Like, we wouldn't even have the entire Walking Dead series. Wow, that's crazy to think about. That's crazy to think about. You know, it's a tearful reunion for Rick and his family, but Shane is kind of like, oh, like, I thought you were dead. Oh, I thought you were dead, because when I left the hospital, I barricaded the door, and I didn't hear a heartbeat, and so he's like, oh, like, my friend, I'm happy to see my friend again, but then he's like, oh, wait, like, that mean I can't bang your wife no more. That mean I can't, oh, wait, but it's a shocking moment, because he thought that Rick was dead, and he told Lori that Rick was dead, and so it kind of creates a little, you know, a little bit of tension in the group. Anyways, the next day, after they come back from their little journey, while they're out hunting, we're introduced to a new character, Daryl Dixon, which he's also a redneck. And guess what? He is the brother of Merle Dixon. And oh wait, where's Merle? He's not here because they left him on a rooftop. Rightfully so, but I mean, if that was your brother, I guess that would be upsetting because that's your brother. So Daryl was like, so y'all just sat up there and left my brother on a rooftop? Like, y'all just sat up there and really left my brother on a rooftop and didn't, like... And then T-Dog is like, man, I feel real bad because I dropped the key, basically. And Rick was like, I, like, kind of sort of handcuffed him to the to the rooftop. I'm sorry, man. And then Daryl was like, you know what? Screw y'all. I'm finna go and get my brother. And he's like, you know what? We're gonna go with you. Because when Rick went to Atlanta, he had that bag of guns that he took from his police station. So he also dropped that bag of guns. So he kind of needed to go back anyway. So he's like, honestly, like, this is just gonna be a road trip for us. And so T-Dog is down to go. He asked Glenn if he can come, and Glenn was like kind of hesitant, but he was like, yeah, sure. So T-Dog, Rick, and Daryl are about to go to Atlanta, but Shane is like, I don't really know if you leaving is a good idea because that kind of leaves us vulnerable. And then Lori is also saying the same thing. She doesn't want him to leave because he just came back. She thought he was dead the whole time, and now he just came back and he's gonna leave again. Honestly, I understand why she was upset, and I feel her pain. I truly do. But he's like, I gotta go back. With Shane and Rick wanting to do something else, and then Shane wanting to do something else. So it's like, a lot of people in the survival group or at the campfire were like, why are y'all going back from Earl? Like, he's a redneck, he's terrible, he's awful, like, he needs to just stay there. But we also kind of need those guns. So it's like, they just end up going, they go. So while Rick is in Atlanta, and the plan is to find Merle and to go get the guns. In the meantime, back at the campsite, we're back at the campsite again, I know. Lori is like, okay, well, now that my husband is back, I gotta set these boundaries with Shane because we kind of were sleeping with each other, and I kind of need to let you know that we're not finna do that no more because my husband is back. So like, this relationship ain't really, like, it's not really appropriate. So she's like, Shane, you gotta stay away from me and my son. Like, this isn't the relationship anymore. Like, it's not appropriate. My husband is back. And so Shane is kind of, he's in his feels. He's upset. He's like, damn, like, why can't I be with my best friend's man? Like, why can't I just slip right back in there? That's what she said. Anyways, so this causes Shane to kind of lash out at Ed Peltier. He ends up beating up Ed because Ed was abusing his wife. And yeah, it's not really looking good for Shane. It really isn't. I mean, but he was right. He was right for beating up Ed because the ladies were just minding their business, having a little key. Ed, Carol's husband, comes out of nowhere and just beats her up for having fun, basically. So Shane had to clock it, but he did kind of go just a little bit too far. He could have gone, in my opinion, he could have gone harder. Get him again. But he did kind of go too, out of the context of what happens, like, he did kind of go too far. Anyways, back to Atlanta. Rick, Daryl, and T-Dog are at Atlanta. They go back to where Merle was supposed to be, on that rooftop. They go to the rooftop. His ass isn't there. He is not on this rooftop, y'all. He's not on the rooftop. They go to the rooftop and they see Merle's hand on the rooftop next to a saw and all that, the blood. And they're like, and Daryl is like, what the freak? And he's in distress, obviously, because brother, one, isn't there, and two, his brother's hand is on that rooftop. Like, it's honestly, if I were Daryl, I'd be mad too. I would. And then that's the end of the episode. So then we move on to episode 4, which is called Vatos. And I think that this episode, ironically, is one of the funnier episodes in the season, just out of what happens in the episode, because it's kind of unserious. Me calling it the funniest episode and what, anyways, I think it's a funny episode despite what happens in it. After Rick and the group discover that Merle basically is not there anymore, they decide to just go get the guns, because I mean, that's what they also came for. So they go to get the guns, and while they're getting the guns, why does a group of vatos pull up and basically kidnap Glenn, and then they take the guns? And then Daryl's like, oh hell no, and he shoots one of them with his crossbow, and he's like, they end up getting away, but they leave someone behind. So with the person that the vatos left behind, they take this person. They're like, you're gonna take us to where your camp is, or to where, you know, your home is. And they kind of have, you know, are able to do like this trade, because Rick has this vato, and then the vatos have Glenn. So they pull up to the vatos house, and they're like, give us Glenn. And they're like, hell no. And then Rick is like, but we got one of your boys. And they're like, okay, like, pull up. So they go inside of the vatos home, and they're like, give me one reason why I shouldn't shoot you right here. And they're about to shoot each other. The head vato, his abuela, comes out of nowhere and is like, hey guys, what's happening? And mind you, I want you to keep in mind, Rick is still in his cop outfit. So the abuela's like, what are you doing? Like, no, my son is a good kid. And then Rick is like, what is going on? And then basically it's revealed that the vatos were taking care of the elderly that were left behind by the workers at a senior home. And so Rick is like, dude, why did you like sit up here and like basically like almost like jeopardize your entire group when you have people you need to take care of? And I mean, this is where it gets funny, because it's like you almost ended up getting gagged just because of some guns. I don't know. Anyways, they make a deal. Glenn goes back to Rick, and they decide to give half of the guns to the vatos, and then they leave. But while Rick and his group are leaving, they realize that the car that they took, or the truck that they took to Atlanta, is gone, which means that Merle probably took that car and is going back to the campsite. He's gonna let all hell break loose. And so they're like, oh, like, we need to hurry up and get back to the campsite. In the meantime, at the campsite, you know, we're having a little fish fry. Andrea and her sister Amy, they, you know, went fishing. They were in their Animal Crossing era, and they got a lot of fish. And they were like, guys, let's have a fish fry. And so at the fish fry, you know, everyone's having nice, it's a sweet moment, and everyone's sharing the little stories, and Dale's, you know, giving his old man wisdom. Amy goes to use the restroom, and then she gets gagged, and she gets bit by a walker. And then the rest of the walkers ambush the group of survivors that are still at the campsite. Literally all hell breaks loose. Merle never ends up showing back up at the campsite, but the walkers end up at the campsite, which I think is because part of the reason why the herd showed up to the campsite is because Glenn, all the way back to the campsite, had that car alarm blaring, and he didn't turn it off till he got back to the campsite. So I personally think that is why those walkers basically ambushed the campsite. Because why would you, I mean, I love Glenn, but why would you do that? I would have turned the car alarm off the second that I made it, or before I got to the mountain that the campsite was on. Me personally, I would have handled that differently. But yeah. And Rick and the rest of his group, they make it back just in time to basically kill off the rest of the walkers. And I'm not gonna lie, it honestly was, it's bad. It's bad. Because half of the survivors that were at the campsite are dead. And then that's the end of the episode. It's a funny episode, but then it's not funny. I'm laughing, but it ain't funny. I'm laughing, but it's not funny. Then we get to episode 5, which is called Wildfire, which Wildfire is the name of the virus that is that the walkers carry, or the walkers have. So, you know, with the group kind of being in their flop era, because, you know, half of their group is dead, the survivors are like, okay, well, we can't just have these bodies lying around, so they burn the walker bodies. And Daryl insists on just burning the survivors that died, just burning them. But then Glenn is like, no, guys, we can't do that. We have to bury them to keep our humanity. He doesn't say keep their humanity, but like that's essentially what that move is. Because if you're just burning your loved ones, like there's no, we're losing our humanity in doing that. Andrea's sister Amy is one of the survivors that died, and it's honestly so sad because the day that her sister died, it literally was her birthday. Like, imagine dying on your birthday. That's actually kind of tragic, for real. Andrea's mourning the death of her sister, obviously. The group is like, okay, like, all right, Andrea, like, we understand, like, what you're going through, but burn her body before she turns into a walker. And Andrea's like, actually, y'all need to leave me alone and let me mourn in peace. And so she does exactly that. And when her sister Amy reanimates, she puts her down. After that, Rick and Shane go out hunting. And, you know, they're reminiscing on their adolescent years. And then Shane tells, like, this kind of questionable story about the time that he had sex with a teacher during middle school or, like, high school. And it's like, what? And he makes it seem like it's like this funny story, and I'm like, why this brother? No, brother, you got groomed. That's not. Anyways, it kind of just gets brushed off in the conversation, which is kind of crazy to me. But anyways, basically after that incident, Rick and Shane start talking, they start talking about what happened, and Rick is like, I think we should go to the CDC to see if there's like a cure or something, like we should just go to the CDC. And then Shane is like, actually no, I don't want to go to the CDC. I want to go to Fort Benning. Fort Benning is where we're supposed to go, and so we should go, and I want to go to Fort Benning. And Rick is like, well, I don't want to do that. They get into like a little heated argument, and then Rick walks off, and then Shane like traces his gun on Rick and is like eyeing him down, and he's like, he catches himself and he's like, you know what? No, I'm not today. And it's a scary and it's a crazy scene, because it's like, are you really gonna kill your best friend because he said he didn't want to go to Fort Benning? Like, y'all are having a slight disagreement right now. And then after, he's like, you know what? I'm not gonna do it. That whole time that he was tracing his gun on Rick, Dale, the old man, not old man, but sort of old man, was watching him the whole time, and he kind of like just plays it off, and he's like, we gotta start wearing vests out here, because I couldn't tell if he was trying to play it off like he wasn't about to shoot Rick. Like, oh, okay, Dale caught you. Dale caught that. Oh, okay. After they like buried the bodies or something, Jim, one of the survivors, is revealed to have been bitten. And he's like, oh my God, no guys, like I'm okay. Like, it's fine. And so with this, it kind of drives the push for Rick and the rest of the survivors, the rest of the group, to go to the CDC to try and see if there's like a cure or something. Shane is still on his like BS, and it's like, I don't want to go for it. But with this, with the tragedy that happened at the campsite, they're like, let's go to the CDC and see if we can get some answers to our very important questions. Right when they're about to leave, Morales and his family, they decide that they want to leave and go look for their family in some other state or something. And in my mind, I'm like, why would that? I guess this is like the beginning of the apocalypse, so maybe like in their minds it wasn't as bad as him leaving was stupid, but he decides to leave. It's whatever, it's him and his family, he decides to leave. So he leaves, and then the group is on their way to the CDC. And while, they're on their little trip, Jim is actually he's like really going through it. Like, it's scary boots for him. His fever progressively just gets worse and worse, and he's like, you know what? I really can't do this anymore. Y'all just gotta leave me. So they end up leaving him on like the side of the road. They leave him and they keep going on their journey. And the group eventually makes it to the CDC. They actually make it to the CDC, and it's close to sunset, nearing like darkness, nighttime. And so they're like, okay, we gotta hurry up and get inside this building. Mind you, the building is surrounded by a bunch of like walkers and whatnot and dead bodies. So they hurry up and make their way. Silently, they go to the building and they're like, oh, well, why does it look like the doors are closed? Why is it, why are the lights like not on? Why is it like, wait guys, like don't tell me we just pulled up here and it ain't nobody in this building. And they're like, okay, like what are we doing? They start panicking. The group starts panicking. Shane is like, see, I told you, man, we should have went to Fort Benning, like I said. And then Rick is like, no, this has to be the answer. This has to be it. And then he sees the camera move and he's like, guys, the camera moved. The camera moved. And then Shane is like, nah, bro, you tweaking. He's like, bro, I'm not tweaking. And then Shane ends up pulling Rick away. And then right as the group is about to leave, the doors open. And that's the end of the episode Wildfire. And then we get to the final episode in the series. And this is, I kind of really like this season because there's only 6 episodes. After this, the length for the seasons just get longer and longer. Which isn't a bad thing, but this is a really easy video for me to do because there's only 6 episodes. Anyway, episode 6 is titled TS19. And at the beginning of the episode, we're introduced to a character who is at the CDC, one of the doctors, Dr. Jenner. And we're given a little bit or a glimpse of how he lived the past, I guess, like month or so in the CDC and whatnot. And then basically we cut back to the present day where the doors open and Dr. Jenner, he lets them inside. And then he's like, I'll let y'all inside on the condition that y'all subject or submit, you know, blood tests so that I can make sure that I'm not letting no ops in here. And so they, you know, get their blood work done and it shows up clean. After the blood test, they basically have a feast, hot showers, and you know, they're drinking and stuff, and it's, you know, it's a good time for them. It's a good moment. After, you know, like the little shenanigans and after the dinner or whatever, Shane, you know, he's a little drunk. I don't like to use that to excuse the scene, but you know, he's had a little bit too much to drink. But he goes to Lori and he basically confronts her and he's like, I love you, like, girl, I love you and I want to be with you in your room. And then she's like, I already set like this boundary with you, like we're not gonna be doing this. I have a husband, I have a son, you are our friend, like you're not my man. And so he gets upset and he SAs Lori. Lori fights back and she scratches him, or she scratches him and it leaves a scar on his face. Shane leaves in the altercation, like it scars Lori, like she's traumatized after this because he just came and went in there and SA'd her for not being with him. And it's crazy because it's like, how does drinking make you that irrational that you just SA someone? That doesn't really make sense to me. And I don't like to use the fact that he was drunk to defend this behavior because it's weird boots. It's really gross. I feel like a lot of people look over this act of Shane, but anyways. And after that, we cut back to Rick, and Rick himself is a little drunk as well. He goes up to Dr. Jenner. He's like, you know what, man, like thank you for letting us in here, like I really appreciate it for real, because to be honest with you, I didn't know how much time we had left out there, because it was bad. It was really not looking good for us, honestly. And he basically just admits the feelings that he didn't admit to like the group, to Dr. Jenner, which kind of does come back later. But anyways, the next morning they're having breakfast and then they're like, you know, Dr. Jenner, we actually have some questions for you. As much as we love the hospitality, we actually came here for a specific reason, and we want to know like what's going on. Like we need answers to our questions. So after breakfast, they go to like the little computer area and the screen, and he's like, pull up test subject 19, and the screen pulls up test subject 19, and it's like a thing, like a scan of like a person's brain. He showed a person who was bit. The person died from the infection, and the infection, like, it lights up inside of the person and it reanimates the person that died. And then in the like scan that they're watching, it's revealed that the test subject was Dr. Jenner's wife, and he's basically like, man, I'm gonna keep it a buck with y'all, I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. I am not the person that y'all wanted to get your answers from. Like, that, my wife, the person that was in that video that got bit, that was the person that would have been able to make a cure. And he's basically like, I don't know what started the virus, I don't know, you know, and I don't have a cure either, so yikes, I don't really have a lot of answers to your questions. And then they get frustrated. It's kind of bleak, because it's like, oh wait, like, we came here to find answers for the questions, like to figure out what started this virus, and you mean to tell me you don't know what started this virus, and you don't, like, there's no cure. So it's like looking like real bleak, and everyone's like, dang, like everyone's kind of in their depressed era. And so the doctor takes it upon himself. He's like, you know what, guys, I'm gonna give us the best option here. And he locks down the room that they're in, and he's like, this place is about to self-destruct. He locks down the place. Like, oh, the place is gonna self-destruct. And they're like, self-destruct? What do you mean it's gonna self-destruct? And he's like, it's gonna self-destruct, like it's gonna blow up. And this is the best option here. And he's like, Rick, you told me yourself it was just a matter of time. And everyone's looking at Rick like, oh, like it was a matter of time till what? Till we were toast out there? Till we were cooked? And they're basically begging and they're pleading, and they're like, let us out of here. Like, just because you want to die don't mean we want to die. And so Dr. Jenner's like, you know what, I'm fine, you guys can leave. And then he whispers something to Rick before he leaves. And while Rick and his group leaves, Andrea and Jackie stay behind, because they're like, maybe this is it. Like, I don't want to keep fighting, especially for Andrea, because I mean, she just lost her sister, so she's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna just stay here. And then Dale is like, well, no. Rick and his group manage to find a way out of the building, and they go to the cars. And then eventually Dale convinces Andrea not to kill herself, and they make it out just in time to beat the explosion. Jackie stayed though, so Jackie did end up dying in the explosion. The building explodes, boom. No answers to the questions. No cure, no hope, no nothing. And so with this not new knowledge, with even more lack of morale in the group, they embark on a journey to try and find something. They don't even know where they're going. It's just like the destination is unknown. They have no clue what they're doing, because I mean, there's no hope. And then that is the end of the season. And honestly, I think, even though there are moments where the CGI is like, oh, like that's the CGI, especially for the building blowing up, I do kind of ibjol at it now. But as a whole, I rate the season like a 7 out of 10. I rate it like I'll give you about a 7 out of 10, because I don't like you, so I always have to keep something negative in reference to you, so you can never get at 10. You can never get at 10 from me, okay? But I'll give you about a 7 out of 10. Anyways, I really like the season. I really like the characters, and I think that it does an amazing job. Not only the first episode of the season, but the entire season kind of does a really good job of just setting up what's to come. And I really think that the season does a good job at setting up this world and this environment of almost of no hope. I mean, again, it's the beginning of the apocalypse, and it almost seems like it's basically over. Like, it really does, like, I mean, and it kind of technically is over. You know, we started the beginning of the season like, oh, like, this is just like some silly little like almost like pandemic, like, oh, this is just a silly little like thing that's gonna be over with in 2 weeks. And then by the end of the season, we're like, oh, maybe society is not gonna go back to the way that it was. And I don't know, it's so good. Like, I don't know, like, it's just so iconic. But yeah, that was kind of, I'm trying to make this review more lengthy. I think there were a lot of things, they set up a lot of things in this season that they never address again. Specifically with the walkers, they do a lot of things with the walkers that they never address again. And a majority, they never address it again in the majority of the rest of the seasons, and then in the last seasons they bring it up, like bring up those like things that happened with the walkers in season 1 in the last season. It's kind of messy, but you know what, it's whatever. In retrospective, I mean I love the season. It's amazing. It's The Walking Dead, and I'm so excited to continue this series. This is only the beginning of something great. Out of all the seasons, this one is not my favorite, but it's still an amazing season. But with that being said, that has been season 1, episode 1 of this Walking Dead video series. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Please, please, please. Look forward to the rest of the videos, because there will be more videos. Like I said, this is a video series. This was episode 1. Yeah, I will see you guys in the next video, where we're talking about season 2. Thank y'all again for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.